Okay, tonight is Wednesday, September 7th, 2022, 6:30, Board of Selectmen meeting. Any reason for non-public tonight, Jim?
We do three items, RSA 91A3, lowercase a and b employment, lowercase d consideration sale of acquisition or lease of land, and pending litigation.
Thank you. Consideration of minutes. This will be for August 17th.
I have one change, and it's on page 6. And it is under MCR collection space assessment, and it's second line, Mrs. Murray, and the second line, it should be the trustees of Libby, they come to, not, and it should say the trustees, not the Friends of the Libby Museum. I was correcting something.
Okay. Somebody like to make a motion with that amendment?
I'll move that we take the minute, we accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Next is a temporary event permit.
I thought, did we get an amended agenda that had the June 22nd minutes? Did people get those?
I did not.
Okay. Well, just.
Oh, wait a minute, there is one here on the second one.
If people
Okay.
haven't read them, we should just table them to the next time.
I don't have them here.
I'm good with them. I mean,
Okay,
everybody else.
Everybody
is,
good
so
with
we
them?
can.
I read them too, but,
I wrote them, so
Yeah.
I have no problem with it.
okay. You want to approve those minutes then too?
I'll make a motion to approve the June 22nd, 2022 minutes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Move on to temporary event permit. The Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, September 7th, 2022 at 6:30 at the Great Hall, Town Hall, 84 South Main Street, Wolfeboro, New Hampshire, for consideration of a temporary event permit for the Friends of the Libby Museum to hold a fundraising flower sale from 9/2/22 to 9/4/22 from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. This permit is retroactive because that was last weekend. And I did my due diligence.
You did.
I did.
Lots of mums.
I bought some mums. So, somebody want to make a public hearing? Anybody want to talk about it? No? Close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to approve the, move to approve the temporary event permit for Friends of the Libby Museum to hold a fundraising flower sale from 9/2/2022 to 9/4/2022 from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. This permit is retroactive.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Unanticipated funds. Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, September 7th, 2022 at approximately 6:30 p.m. in the Great Hall, Wolfeboro Town Hall, for acceptance of unanticipated funds for an amount awarded that is less than $5,000 in accordance with RSA 31:95-B relative to grant funding in the amount of $1,326.83 for overtime for the Drug Task Force program. Anybody going to talk to this? Chief? You're up. About the unanticipated funds for the Drug Task Force?
Wasn't aware there was a grant that came forward.
Well, that's what we have here.
Well, what we have here is, looks to me to be a reimbursement for funds for wiretapping from November 9th, 2021 till June 30th, 2023. That's what we have here.
Okay, so we probably don't want to be talking about that operation. Now I'm familiar, but I wasn't aware that you were dealing with it. I know what that is. That was for overtime reimbursement for officers that were involved in an operation. What are your questions that I could answer on the periphery of this?
It's for an extended time period. That's for the expenses. It's the time period. We're
Yeah,
not
it's
approving something, going forward. We're part of before and still going forward.
I would recommend that you accept it.
Okay, I think I can handle that.
I figured that. Somebody want to make a motion?
Thank you. Okay.
Move to the acceptance of unanticipated funds for an amount awarded that is less than $5,000 in accordance with RSA 31:95-B relative to grant funding in the amount of $1,326.83 for overtime for the Drug Task Force program and to authorize the town manager to sign the application.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Next is our bulk quote, which is the weekly manifest, tent to cut and timber warrant, current use application.
Dave?
Yes.
I would like to remove there was a letter here from the assessor on the annual exempt property that was attached in here, and it is attached to the bulk vote, and I do not want to accept that. I think it's a huge issue, and we need to talk about it. Everybody else, it is the 4th in my packet.
Yep.
And I don't think that's something we should just vote through a bulk vote.
Okay.
I agree, there's a lot of properties involved with that and stuff.
Yeah, I'm sitting there saying, you got to be kidding me. So,
And some might have different opinions and answers to them, so.
yeah, so it's D is where I think it's listed, the annual exempt property A9 and A12. I'd like to remove that from the bulk vote.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Like a motion for the rest of the bulk vote, please?
Move as amended.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, new business. Robertson Green, end of the year 2021, audit report.
Good evening.
You're on.
All right. My name's Tim Green with Robertson Green, and I'm here to present the audit of the year ended December 31st, 2021 to the board. I know you've all should have received the audit by this point. We issued it. It's dated August 15th. You probably got it a week or so after that. But so basically, what I'm hired for is this first opinion page. And then, as I will discuss, this year was a little different. You had a single audit this year for the first time since I've been doing the audit. That becomes applicable when the town has a total over $750,000 of federal funds expended in total. So not within one program, but just add them all up. So because the town went over that threshold for the first time in a while this year, we had to do a little bit more work for the audit. So I'll go through that too. But anyway, so you get the opinion, as I said, is what we're here to provide. Once again, the town received a clean opinion. We gave you a clean opinion on your governmental activities, your business type activities, each major fund that you had, and then the aggregate remaining fund information. Within the audit opinion letter, two things to note. Some of the wording changed. There's new auditing standards, so there was some additional information pertaining to what we do to perform the audit, what the town's responsibilities are on behalf of the financial statements. A lot to read and digest at times, but beyond that, we also did give you an opinion on your schedule of expenditures of federal awards, which we're not required to do that if you don't spend over $750,000, but because you did, in the back of your financial statements, there was a schedule listing out all your federal grants that you expended And we give an opinion on that saying that it's fairly presented. So again, that's what you're striving towards every year, and I'm pleased to say that it occurred. Beyond the opinion letter, you had your management's discussion analysis, which is drafted and prepared by your finance office. I look through it, make sure the numbers are consistent with your financial statements themselves. Beyond that, I don't, I just provide guidance if there was something that was out of line, but for the most part, it's pretty generic and pretty standard because there's a set list of items that you need to address within this letter. I typically run through the numbers if that's what you'd like again this year. Try to be concise. There's a lot here though, of course. So Exhibit 1 is your statement of net position. This is governmental activities of the town and your business type activities. Business type activities, of course, your enterprise funds, water, sewer, electric department, Pop Whalen. And then governmental activities are all the rest of the town that are not considered fiduciary. It's actually 2 pages this year. So on this bottom of page 14, which is the second page of Exhibit 1, you can see the total net position for the town for their governmental activities is just over 35 million, and your business type activities just under 33 million. Of that net position, you can see the bulk of it is tied up in net investment in capital assets. So that's your physical plant, equipment, buildings, net of all the debt tied into those. So you can see for your governmental activities, you had about $38 million in that, and then in your enterprise funds, you had another 23 million. You have a deficit unrestricted net position in the governmental activities of about 5.6 million. This is primarily the result of, as I say every year, primarily the result of your net pension liability and your other post-employment benefits liability. Most items on your balance sheet, this is, again, these exhibits 1 and 2 are full accrual. So most items on here tend to have if you have an asset, your liabilities tend to be related to assets. So debt, for example, is related to capital assets. Net pension liability, OPEB liability, you have no real related asset to those. So, as those balances are large, again, they represent your New Hampshire retirement system pension and the medical subsidy tied to that, and then as well your implicit rate for health insurance, which is as your employees are working in the town and receiving health insurance through the town, when they leave, they still have the benefit of where they needed to do so, they could buy through the town, through COBRA and so on, at the lower rate that they're receiving as being in a pool. If they were, if you're of retiree age and you go out and try to buy off on the market, you're paying a lot more. So it's a benefit that you're accruing as you work, and so standards require the town to recognize that as employees are working. Exhibit 2, it's a statement of activities. So bottom line, the change in net position from the prior year for your governmental activities, your net position increased by about 1.6 million. And for your business type activities, it increased by about $1 million. This schedule tries to show the relationship on some of your revenues to the functions of the town. So for example, charges for services for general government, which does include motor vehicle permits and other license and permits. That's the bulk of the revenue for general government. And again, property taxes and so on are not tied to specific functions of the town. They are just a general revenue, so they are in the bottom section, along with other grants and miscellaneous items that are not tied to one specific program. Exhibit 3, this is governmental fund statement. This is your modified accrual basis. This is what your general operating account is on. Major funds here listed. General fund is the only governmental fund that is major. Determining a major fund is based on quantitative methods. So if any governmental fund were to have a lot of assets or liabilities in any one year, or a lot of revenues or expenditures, it could bump them into major status. But this year, the general fund was the only fund that was major. And then there's a column for your aggregate non-major funds. For the general fund, total assets at the year end was just over 18 million. Total liabilities about 9.5 million. Deferred inflows of resources of about $1 million. And then the total fund balance of $7.5 million. Of your total fund balance, 3.8 million of that is unassigned. You have assigned fund balance of just over 500,000 and committed fund balance of about 2.5 million. restricted fund balance of just over 600,000, and non-spendable of 70,000. Restricted fund balance does include the library fund, which gets reported within the general fund. Committed fund balance includes non-lapsing, continuing appropriations, or your expendable, and as well as your expendable trust funds, which again are reported within the general fund. And then assigned fund balance typically is open POs, other encumbrances that are done internally. You can see your other governmental fund total. You have total fund balance of just under 2 million. That's segregated through non-spendable fund balance of almost 900,000, restricted fund balance just over 1 million, committed fund balance of just over 100,000, and a slight deficit of 2,000 in one fund. And the breakdown of your non-major funds is in a schedule in the back too, so you can see individually which fund those make up. Exhibits 4 and then Exhibit 6, this is a walkthrough between the governmental fund basis, which is modified accrual, and your full accrual basis, which is showing on Exhibits 1 and 2. So just to kind of detail that, you can see that the top line, your total fund balance in your governmental funds is $9.5 million. When you adjust for full accrual items, you're adding $47 million worth of capital assets net of depreciation. You're factoring in revenue that's not available on the fund basis, but is available on the full accrual basis of another 600,000. And then you're putting on your liabilities, your long-term debt of just over 22 million. So that's how you go from $9.5 million fund balance on the governmental fund basis to $35 million net position. Exhibit 5 is your statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. Again, the general fund, only major fund showing here. Town had just under $18 million of revenues in the general fund, total expenditures of about 17.6 million. So that's, you can see an excess revenue over expenditures of 358,000. There's transfers out 650,000, transfers in of just under 10. So your net change in fund balance in the general fund was a decrease of about $280,000. So the beginning total fund balance for the general fund was 7.8 million. The ending total fund balance 7.5. You can see that your non-major fund total increased by about 250,000, up from 1,750,000 to about 2 million for the year. Again, Exhibit 6 is just as like Exhibit 4. This one's just showing you the difference in revenues and expenditures on the two types of accounting basis. So where your fund basis started at a slight deficit, your change in net position was actually an increase in the 1.5 million. And basically the big factor being paying off debt is an expense in the general fund, but it's just a reduction in liability on your full accrual basis. The same thing with purchasing capital assets, an expense to the general fund, an asset on your full accrual basis. So. Exhibit 7 is a budgetary basis schedule, your statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. This is, again, your budgetary basis, so this is what you're setting your tax rate on. So there are just a couple differences between budgetary and GAAP basis. So Exhibit 7 to Exhibit 5 and 3, the changes being the way deferred taxes are handled and encumbrance. On the budgetary basis, basically your encumbrance is considered an expense to the town because you're looking at your true result of your budget to actual. So for total revenues in the general fund on the budgetary basis, you had 17.4 million. Total expenditures, 17.4 million as well. You can see excess of revenues over expenditures of just over 7,000. You had a net transfers out. It transfers out of just under 1.5 million, transfers in of about 930,000. So you had a total transfers out of 500,000. You had a slight decrease in non-spendable fund balance, which is an increase in unassigned fund balance. And the same thing, restricted, you had a slight increase in restricted, which results in a decrease in unassigned. So you can see that the unassigned fund balance started the year at 4.7 million on the budgetary basis, ended the year at 4.2 million. The last group of exhibits are for your proprietary funds. These are your enterprise, your water, electric, sewer, and Pop Whalen. Just going to the bottom line, you can see the water department ended the year with a total net position of about 9,800,000. Electric department ended just over 11 million. Sewer as well, 11.2 million, and Pop Whalen ended at about 580,000. Exhibit 9 shows you the changes in those net positions. So you can see the third from the bottom line. Water department had an increase of almost $500,000 to net position. Electric department had an increase about $650,000. Sewer department increased by about $34,000, and the Pop Whalen saw a decrease of almost $75,000. There's a statement of cash flows on Exhibit 10. Again, just shows you good information. You can see sewer department had had a big ongoing project, so the RIB project, if you will. So they had not borrowed in 2021, but yet had incurred about $2.5 million worth of expenses. So on cash flow basis, obviously that's going to show you a big decrease in cash. In 2022, you would expect to see an increase back because you will have borrowed those funds. Exhibits 11 and 12 are fiduciary funds. These are private purpose trust funds and custodial funds. So if the town is holding funds on behalf of another government, such as the school district, you are a custodial agent there. And if you're holding funds and your trust funds that the town has no decision making and they don't go to benefit town-wide population, typically that represents scholarships where the school board typically decides, or school administration who is awarded a scholarship. Those are considered private purpose trust funds. So you can see total net position in your private purpose trust funds just under $500,000, and your custodial funds, the town is holding about $2 million of those types of funds. Exhibit 12, it just shows your additions and deductions. This is a relatively newer schedule. Standards changed like 2 years ago, I'd say, where you started seeing this schedule. Before, you never saw the ins and outs. You just saw the assets and net balance. I don't typically go through the notes, but if there were questions, I'd answer them. But again, the notes are designed, they're required to supplement your financial statements, and they're designed to be more explanatory of the balances, significant balances, and significant policies of the town. So they should be, it's always the town's responsibility to make sure these are an accurate reflection of the town's policies and balances. Again, exhibits 17 and 18 I referenced earlier, which this is a combining schedule of your non-major funds. Not much to highlight. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can see your larger funds are your capital projects funds. The capital projects fund is segregated from the general fund for those projects that are funded primarily through grants and bonding. If you have a capital item that's funded entirely through taxes, that tend to get reported within the general fund itself. And then your permanent funds are more trust funds. These are funds that are held by your trustees for town-wide purposes. Exhibit 19 is a more detailed schedule of revenues on the budgetary basis. Bottom line, the town had a positive variance. Your actual revenues were over your estimated revenues by just over $550,000. Exhibit 20 is the same thing, but this is a schedule of your appropriations, expenditures, and encumbrances. So the bottom line on the second page of that exhibit, you had a positive variance. You had basically unspent appropriations of just about $60,000 after factoring encumbrances at the end of the year and adding in encumbrances from the beginning of the year. Finally, Exhibit 21, a schedule of changes in unassigned fund balance on the budgetary basis. Town started the year with an unassigned fund balance of $4.7 million, voted to use $1.13 million to maintain the tax rate or reduce the tax rate. Again, had a revenue surplus, $550,000, had unexpended balance of appropriations of $60,000. So you had a budget surplus of just over $600,000. Decreased in your non-spendable fund balance, increased your unassigned fund balance by about $40,000, and an increase in restricted decreased your unassigned fund balance by $2,600. So you can see you ended with an unassigned fund balance of $4.2 million. Last section is new, obviously, for the town this year because of the single audit. So this is the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. You can see the town reported 5 grants. The most significant, of course, was a CDBG grant for the Gala Makers Mill project. The town was basically a pass-through agent for that project, but is required to report that as activity of the town. So most of the compliance procedures took place working with Lakes Region Planning Commission, who basically handled the administration of that. And it went very smooth. They had everything. They had, their paperwork was very well in order. They knew exactly what requirements were going to be asked about when it came to the audit. So we provided 2 further opinion letters because of the single audit. We give you an opinion on your financial statements in accordance with government auditing standards. So there's basically 3 levels of auditing. There's the standard audit that you always get, which is in accordance with auditing standards. Then if you have a federal, what's considered a yellow book audit, which would be for any sort of ongoing federal program, that requires another level of auditing under government auditing standards. And then when you have a single audit, which means you had a grant you were over the 750, and then we identify which major grant program that you had, then we are auditing in compliance with the uniform guidance. So there's 3 levels of the audit, so that's why you have 3 opinion letters this year. But again, they're all clean opinions, so without reading them to you, that's basically summarizing what the result was. The very final exhibit is a schedule of findings and question costs. This actually is really good. It's the result of the single audit, but it's a really good summary. You can see basically 2 sections, financial statements, which are those exhibits we went through, and as well as the notes that support them, and then the federal awards. So you can see you had an unmodified opinion on all your opinion units. You had no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and no instances of non-compliance for your financial statements. And then for the federal awards we tested, which again was just the CDBG program, but that was 90%, if you will, of the total. There were no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and no issues of non-compliance that we were required to report. So, because the town had not had a single audit in many years, you were not low risk. That would not have changed the program we audited, but like for a school district, for example, they tend to, if they maintain the low risk status, meaning they haven't had findings over 2 years, they've had an audit every year, that can change the level of testing that's required. But for the town, you had one giant program compared to the rest, and you had never had a single audit in a long time, so you were not low risk, unfortunately. But that in a nutshell is the audit report. So any questions?
I have one on page 15. It's Exhibit 2, and it's the sewer department, and it says business type activities, and it has a negative 536,715. Do you know why we had that?
So that's basically because those program revenues do not include that transfer in that the sewer department gets every year.
Okay.
So basically, it's almost expected because it's roughly right in line with the transfer amount, the 538.
So that's what need to be transferred in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brian?
I just have a general question.
Mm-hmm.
Our town, compared to other towns like in New Hampshire, we're very financially healthy?
Yes, I would say you are, and you have a fund balance policy too that basically looks at where you're supposed to be. I don't have the number right off the top of my head where you are within that line. Your finance office would be able to calculate that pretty easily. But yeah, your fund balance itself is a healthy number. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Okay, next on our agenda, New Hampshire DOT Highway Block Grant Funds, request to expend. Jim?
Yeah, so here you'll see a memo. We received some additional funds from the state relative to roads and bridges. At this time, we feel that we need to not really utilize any of the bridge funds until we are at a point of gaining a much better understanding of projects going forward that need to be completed. However, we do feel that of the road monies, we should expend some of these monies. We received $152,489, and we've got some work that needs to be completed, which includes the overlays of East Clark Road and Goodrich Road. As you're aware, we did those base pavements last year. They were factored in to this year's workload. However, due to some of the escalations we've observed with the capital projects, we're not going to be able to hit all of that. So we'd like to use some of these funds for that purpose. And then some of the funds as well for the Pleasant Valley Road project, which is currently ongoing. I can try to answer any further questions you have, and toward the end of the meeting, I can explain a little bit further why we're looking at revisiting some of this stuff.
Any questions of Jim right now?
I have one question. I'm assuming that we do not have to spend the state bridge aid this year?
That is my understanding. We do not have to spend that. We did reach out to see if we could put it into an expendable trust or capital reserve, and we were advised we couldn't.
Okay.
But basically, it's going to be held. And the goal going forward is to have our bridges evaluated, create a maintenance program, and define what that scope of work is going forward. You know, if it's guardrails, if it's trimming, if it's treatment of the concrete, whatever that may be, and hopefully utilize some of these funds to execute that versus putting it on the taxpayer.
Okay.
All right, could I have a motion in reference to East Clark Road and Goodrich?
Yeah, I'll move to authorize the Public Works Department to use road funds to supplement the road upgrade budgets for this and next year. This overlay of East Clark Road and Goodrich Road for an estimated cost of $30,000, and use $122,000 for overlaying sections of Pleasant Valley Road and making additional repairs next year.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Next is approval building maintenance capital reserve funds.
I'd like to table this if we could. Got a couple of other items that I've got to get through before we can get to these projects. These projects need to be done, but not right now.
Okay. Okay, next, approval highway solid waste equipment capital reserve fund request.
So this one, this is a replacement of a trailer up to the highway department. Another item that you'll see later tonight is a purchase of a piece of equipment next year. The trailer that the highway department currently has for moving these smaller types of machines, it's simply worn out, and it's not a good a safe trailer for those guys to be able to work from. So we think it makes some sense to go forward and purchase this utility trailer, will help them to be able to move around some of their smaller pieces of equipment without needing such a large area to turn the trailer around in some of the smaller neighborhoods. And again, it's $11,000. We do feel that we have, although we've spent money out of the capital reserve fund, we do feel it's there. And then if the excavator does come, mini excavator comes forward next year in the budget and is approved, it'll simply, that trailer will be able to move this around in conjunction with some of their other smaller pieces of equipment.
Any questions? Linda?
I have a question. How old is the trailer? And the reason I'm asking is I have noticed that we've had some useful life longer than the equipment is lasting, and I want to see if we can be a little bit more accurate, and so when we put money in this fund that we're putting in enough.
Yeah, so wholeheartedly agree, Linda. One of the things that's going to be happening over the next year is we're going to be taking a very comprehensive look at the fleet between solid waste, highway, and those divisions, and trying to get a better handle on, okay, what does it really cost to schedule out these replacements? If I remember correct, Linda, Tony, the foreman up there, he wasn't sure how old that trailer was, but it's been here longer than him, and I think he's been here for 20 years.
Okay. And I guess it's going back to making sure, as you're saying, to get that capital reserve and the life expectancies of our equipment accurate. So
Yeah.
I have no problem. I just would like to see that done, and I think you're on the road to do that.
I think we are.
Okay, somebody, I'll make a motion that we move to expend $11,000 for utility trailer to replace HD 29.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Next item, we're having conversations right now with the CIP process, and there's been a ask last year. We've conducted some evaluation, and it does make financial sense for the town to purchase a mini excavator to have in our arsenal of equipment. I think the question becomes, the excavator, the main excavator we have now, was purchased by the general fund. The backhoe is purchased by the water department, and then when it's retired, it's transferred up to solid waste. So the question is, this mini excavator, do we break this out amongst the general fund, the water fund, and the sewer fund? And if we do, are we breaking that out in an even 33% for the purchase? Are we looking at another model? I just need to have some feedback from the Board of Selectmen as we move forward on this, so we have an idea where how that should be allocated.
Do we have any idea on the percentage of use that we've been doing it? I mean, it seems like that it should be allocated based on that department's use of the equipment.
So I can tell you that it's heavily used right now on general fund projects such as ditching, et cetera. However, they have alluded to the fact that, for example, the water and sewer department, right now they have the backhoe, they go out, and if there's a tight dig, they will go ahead and use the backhoe, which tends to lead to additional work because of, the tearing up of lawn and whatnot. So I think we aren't going to know for a period of time what that usage is going to be, because I think once we get it, they're going to use it more, and they'll probably see more efficiencies in their operation and closing up those digs and getting back onto other projects. So it's kind of a tough question to answer.
Then it's hard to decide what percentage, if you want it based on something. If not, we can, what you have here is fine with me, but
Yeah, I
Any
think
other question?
I kind of agree. I think, you're going to see the bulk of it will be highway department. As Jim said, doing drainage, ditch cleaning, things like that. But it will get used by your water and sewer too for repairs and small projects too. So I almost think to start out with, the numbers that Jim supplied us here would be as good as anything to go with. So, I mean.
I think so.
Yep. Okay,
So a 60-20-20 split is good.
Yep.
Okay, well, we will process that. Thank you very much.
okay, next is a discussion request from Susan Rappella on an ordinance banning single-use bags. She is not going to be here from what I understand. She just wants some direction from us. There is a note here, and I think it's Amy did this. You will see that Mr. Rappella's request, she didn't want to go to the meeting, so she's looking for a response in writing. It says, I did some Google research. Looks like Portsmouth explored this. I couldn't find anyone else that has banned single-use bags, other than, I think it's Vermont, Maine, and Connecticut have banned them. But New Hampshire has an audit this time.
I know a lot of the supermarkets will, collect the used bags. The other thing, the Lions Club collect a bunch of it and got some benches. So maybe we can have some drop-off space where bags can go and look at something like that. I think for us to come out and try to get all the supermarkets in town and everybody in town not to use plastic bags, I don't think is realistic, but I would think we could maybe collect it, see if we can get a bench or something.
I had an interesting idea. How about we ask the stores in town voluntarily on Earth Week to try and not use plastic bags for a week? See what they can do, see how they can manage to get around it. It could be a suggestion from the Board of Selectmen that on Earth Week, no single-use plastic bags, and see what happens in town. And we can get a feel for, do people want to? Is it too hard for businesses? Just a thought.
Well, I think, you want to be on the spot on this? Would you go around and ask some of the businesses, particularly the grocery stores, I'm
Absolutely.
thinking of in particular,
If
what
you-
their feelings would be about it?
If you want me to, I
Okay,
can
yeah,
take a
if-
survey for it.
You know, I think that's a kind of an interesting idea Brian has, because it would be for a short period of time.
Right.
We could do it just for Earth Day if we
Well, I
want to.
was wondering, that was where I was going to say, could we get them and go around and get a survey of whether they're willing
Yeah.
to do it or not? I think that's a good
Yeah.
idea, Dave.
I think that you don't mind doing it. I know
I'll do it in all my
I
extra
know you
time.
like those things,
I'll
so,
do it in all my spare time.
okay.
I can
good.
help you if you want to. It's a split and see if we can
Anybody
get them
have a
one day.
problem with Brian doing that?
Nope.
And I'll join him, help him.
Okay, next. Approval of proposed budget meetings. Schedule.
So you got in your packet here, you have a proposed schedule. The only thing that is not on this that we have to remember is September 28th, the agencies are coming in to give their presentation, and I'm hopeful to give you the complete budget book with an overview of where we're at, and as well to have that online. So this is what we're looking at for a schedule. Looking forward to hearing from you regarding any input that you may have on dates that may not work, and if we've got to make any adjustments.
I'm not sure I'm going to be here on September 28th.
28th, yeah.
I may
think
have to-
I think we
I'm-
talked about that, correct?
Yeah, I'd have to cut our time down in New Jersey in order to get here, so I'm going to go to the Garden State. So I won't be here the 28th.
Well, the 28th is agencies, so that's, they're coming back anyway.
I just won't be here for that.
Okay, the other note was food allocations. Always fun.
I'll take the 11th. I'll start it off.
Anybody else want to volunteer?
I'll do the 13th.
Guess you guys are getting towards the end here.
I'll do the 24th.
You and me, Dave.
Yeah, sounds that way, doesn't it?
Take your pick.
Doesn't matter to me. I'll do the 26th. That means Brad gets the 27th.
27th, yep.
And we'll volunteer Amy for the November 1st. How's that?
November what? First?
If we have to have November 1st, we'll volunteer Amy.
We'll write Amy down.
Okay. All right, so that, looks like that's set up pretty good. Any other business?
I have one. I would like for the town manager or the Board of Selectmen to request an audit from White Horse Recovery, because I've heard some unusual information about the organization in regards to our Carroll County. So I would like to request from them an audit so that we see see where our funds went last year.
I can make that request.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I'd like to go back to a request that I made last meeting, that we send a letter to the Wolfeboro dock attendants, and they, I believe, are done now. And I would like to see if we could get that out sooner than later. I'm willing, since Jim's going to be on vacation, to draft something and have Amy send it out and mark up anything you want. And I just would like to get it out to them before it gets too long after they did the work, if that's okay with everybody.
Okay, committee reports. Brian?
I think 2 CIP meetings, a pickleball meeting, which was very interesting, and a budget committee meeting.
I had, last night, we had the joint meeting for the zoning board and planning board.
Linda?
Yeah, I had a Wolfeboro Waters Committee meeting. I had 2 library trustees meeting. Brian, you and I went to the Budget Committee. We did 2 CIP meetings. I've done 2 Friends of Pop Whalen. I was at the Planning Board last night, and I talked with a group of people who are going to be on the Charrette Committee trying to get the agenda together today.
Okay, I had none.
I think the only one I had was, along with Luke and Linda there, last night, the joint meeting with the planning board and the ZBA on a cell tower application.
Okay. Town managers report?
Yeah, Brad, you missed one. Brad and I met with Bowen Corp. They're going to go ahead and they've got the documents relative to the Libby Museum, and they're going to work through that and come up with an updated cost pricing to see how close that is compared to the estimate that we have. There's some concerns that he thinks that it might be a little bit low, and he identified those with the architect, but he's actually going to work through that process and give us a number. The good news that he provided us is the document that we submitted for CIP, he thinks is pretty close to where we need to be. So we'll see what happens with that going forward. As you've said, a couple CIP meetings, a budget meeting, and working on budgets. So that's been busy. And then I guess lastly, I just would like to announce that effective December 30th, Dave Ford will be retired from the town. In the interim, Dave's going to be working remotely on some projects to close those out so that we can have a fairly smooth transition as Dave goes off to enjoy his retirement. I think there's one thing that we can say about Dave. The projects that he's done have absolutely made Wolfeboro a better place to live, work, play, visit, etc. He's certainly been passionate about the town, and I for one, remember when I was introduced here as fire chief, he gave a presentation, and it was exciting to watch because of his passion. And I truly hope that Dave is able to enjoy his retirement. That's all I have.
Any questions from the press?
Hey, let's see if this works this time. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, okay. I just wanted to say that I attended the open house of the Maker's Mill. It was the first one. And I highly recommend the tour. It's the only maker's space in Carroll County, and it's quite complex and offers a tremendous number of programs with a lot of possibility for using some of their spaces. And I just wanted to announce that these open houses, these tours will continue on Fridays from 10 to 11:30, every Friday on into the fall. It's quite an accomplishment for our town. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, now we are up to public input. 3 minutes, no more than 15 minutes. Anybody want to talk to us tonight? No? Come on up.
My name is Paul Lang. This is my wife, Susan. We're new to Wolfeboro. We're new to New Hampshire. We just like to, we were told to come here to register to vote by the town clerk's office yesterday. Is that out of line, or is that?
So normally.
Nobody seems.
We've never heard it before.
Well, we tried to do it there, and they told us our documentation, for me, it was okay, but I have no utility bills in my wife's name that shows 41 Brackett Road where we live, and the service house at 41 Brackett Road. But my wife, she lives with me, and we would like to get it resolved because we want to vote. Were they out of line telling me to come here?
I have no idea.
Well,
I live on Brackett Road.
Well, I spoke to Senator Bradley's office, and they told me to come and do it under a qualified voter affidavit or a domicile voter affidavit.
We usually have that at the
Yeah.
polling places.
At the polling place on Tuesday, you should be able to do that with one of the,
Supervisors of the
Supervisors of the
checkers.
So the question is,
Well, this was given to me.
yeah, what can his wife use to verify her identity?
supervisor of the checklist.
I have multiple pieces of documentation, if you'd like to see it.
Oh, we've got
they won't
somebody
accept
from the checklist just arrived. He's a member of the checklist. I think he can help you.
Yes. Oh, we're in the wrong rooms.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sorry about that.
I was wondering, wait,
he brought that in.
that's why we look so.
Okay.
Well, they told us to go upstairs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
welcome, welcome to Wolfeboro.
I'm Linda Murray. I live on Brackett Road. Oh, I know. Right. Nice to meet you. Yes, we'll stop by when I get. Okay.
Okay, anybody else in public input? If not, I'll entertain a motion to go into non-public.
I'll move to go into a non-public session.
Second?
All those in favor? Yes?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.